Hello, this is our period 5 debate, middle school debate 2 final debate for spring 2025. On the pro first is Adithi and Cindy. On the con second is Vedant and Jacob. First speaker, stand on up. And we're timing ourselves, yes?
Yes. Okay, is anyone not ready? Okay. So, my name is Cindy Hu, and I'm going to be the first speaker on the affirmative side of this debate, and my timer will start on my first word. Corey Lane affirms, result, the United States federal government should substantially increase its investment in domestic nuclear energy. Contention 1 is air pollution. First, Trump's recent rollbacks of EPA regulations will only increase air pollution. Drugman 25 tells you that Americans facing increasing deaths due to Trump's sweeping rollbacks of air quality regulations, including standards for soot on coal-fired power plants. Second, increased federal nuclear investment will use small modular nuclear reactors to replace coal reactors. Bowen wrote on February 25th that Secretary Wright will choose how his agency will invest in nuclear energy. SMRs replace coal plants and use existing infrastructure. Finally, replacing U.S. coal power plants will save 40,000 lives yearly. Henneman 23 said that U.S. coal EGUs over the past 2 decades have resulted in 460,000 extra deaths, 22% of total PM2.5 mortality. There is a major health benefit by shutting down coal facilities completely. Contention 2 is desalination. First, water scarcity is rampant and will only increase. Suddenly moved through January 1st writes that by 2030, 50% of the global population will face significant water scarcity. However, desalination meets less than 2% of this demand. Large-scale production and availability are barriers. Second, increased federal nuclear investment will create the manufacturing base necessary to export small modular nuclear reactors. Bowen, February 25th, says that if Secretary makes significant investments, he will focus on SMRs to create a new reactor option deployed by U.S. utilities and other nations. Third, U.S. SMR manufacturing investments ensure global SMR adoption. International Trade Commission 24 tells you that for SMRs to occur, establishing a sustained supply chain for manufacturing is critical for widespread adoption. Fourth, now is key. 2 Hill, February 21st, said that nuclear energy sits at a crossroad. The biggest challenge remains uncertainty, and the industry has already put brakes on several projects, and uncertainty doesn't encourage investment in an 80-year asset. Federal funding could aid deployment exponentially. The next few months will be critical. Fifth, SMRs are key to global desalination projects. Sudal and Muthu 25 tells you that desalination removes salt from seawater, making clean water. Small reactors do not prioritize electricity, producing solely for desalination, and 60% of that heat is discharged from a nuclear reactor is utilized. Mass production and barriers to high energy consumption are key to desalination. Sixth, global desalination can save millions of lives per year. May 24th says that every drop of water helps. Water scarcity contributes to a waterborne disease which annually results in deaths of 2 million. Desalination ensures reliable water at a lower cost. 7. SMRs avoid any cons to nuclear energy. Nuclear Energy Agency 24 said that SMRs have been built on 70 years of experience to enhance safety. Smaller cores with smaller nuclear materials, accident-tolerant fuels, lower pressures, and passive safety systems. SMRs enable variable renewable energy while maintaining supply, and SMRs switch between electricity and heat generation, compact size, and simplicity. Improving constructability reduces manufacturing time and is more affordable upfront. Nuclear has proven solutions to manage fuel and waste for decades. SMR fuel can be reused. 8. Investment will solve for desalination harms. Munward, January 20th, says that solutions to address brine improves infrastructure. It reuses brine, enhancing the plant efficiency. The brine crisis is not technically complex, and newer desalination plants are less polluting. We monitored these plants and found no significant environmental impact. The real issue lies in the lack of investment. Finally, investment can solve for other harms. Low 23 says that innovations support nuclear energy and is already playing an essential role in enhancing performance, safety, and the life of existing reactors. The IAEA Grossi said that enabling investment for new projects remains an uphill battle. Innovations such as artificial intelligence, robotics, and 3D printing advance nuclear power. And thus, we affirm. Thank you.
Okay. Now this will be my speech. Two. Is anyone not ready? Great. To introduce myself, my name is Gupda. I am the first speaker for the negatives in this debate. And I'll start the timer for my 4-minute constructive on my first word. Judge, me and my partner proudly negate the resolution. Our first intention is meltdown. Bring the resolution, investing with double nuclear power plants. IA in January writes that investment in nuclear energy increases in APS. Nuclear capacity more than doubles. Large reactors capture the majority of investment. It's more than doubles the risk of U.S. meltdown, making it all but inevitable. Row 16 writes that authors analyzed all past core melt accidents has been a failure rate of 1 per 3,104 reactor years. Now to show no learning effects. The overall probability in more than 443 reactors is 70%. That is 104 reactors has a 50% probability of experiencing a 1 core melt accident in the next 25 years. This risk goes up even more under Trump. And Wilson skips steps and makes it exponentially more likely. Mark Florida 25 writes that Trump, through his recent executive order, has attached independent regulatory agencies, and independent regulator is free from influence, essentially subordinating regulators to the president. Fukushima was the result of collusion between the government, regulators, and the lack of governance. Because of Trump's assault of the NRC, components of SMR's pressure-reduced regulation could have been exempted from the requirements always set for catastrophe. Evidence that reactors operate safely. The components given free pass to exploit untested technology. It's been proven that power plant structures will take advantage, and they don't care about safety. Limit 24 writes that reactors be expensive. Numbers reduce costs by eliminating safety features, such as concrete containment, emergency pumps, and quality assurance. Just the meltdown risk will up exponentially if we invest. When meltdowns happen, they're the worst disaster possible. Here in 2022, right, that meltdowns is the worst case scenario, causing releases of deadly radiation that can spread for hundreds of miles, impacting wildlife. Radiation can lead to cancer and death. Effects last for hundreds of years. Even one more Chernobyl event happens, that's going to be close to 1 million. Those 10 writes that based on health data, regional surveys, and scientific reports, 985,000 people died, mainly as a result of Chernobyl. If these accidents happen again, these million people will die again if we affirm the resolution. Second tension is inflation. Recent Brexit will cost $1 trillion. Bowen 23%. Recent Princeton study said the lowest cost scenario involves substantial sugar bill program, and the investments for this total more than $1 trillion of major expense. Second, federal investment in people with deficit spending only. Lesson 23 writes that given the country's deficit, federal utilities are financed with additional debt and nothing else. This increases inflation by 20% over just 3 years. Page 24 shows that government was heavily in 2020 and 2021 and flew by the president 97% in just 3 years, adding trillion deficit dollars. All inflation failed, includes supply chain disruptions, price gouging, and the broad monetary theory. These three experiments all point to a powerful nexus between excessive deficit spending and rapid increase in prices. Our market shows that affirming will lead to a rapid increase in deficit spending. We nailed up that by 6.6 per 100K. William 16 writes that regression assessed inflation, mortality across 21 countries, healthcare and population were controlled. A 1% rise in inflation was associated with significant deterioration in health, largest deterioration in male adult mortality, a 0.0033 rise per 1,000 deaths. And this, rises by 20% if we affirm the resolution. If we do the math, it's over 11,000 people per year, based on the current youth population of 340 million. Correction 3 is circumvention, which is another reason why you can negate the resolution. Where the government will pick losers. Directly 15 writes that list of federal mistakes include Finch River Breeder Reactor, National Nuclear Facility, Superconducting Super Collider, and the Yukon Mountain Nuclear Waste Mess. Subsidies restore economic activity. Status firms get an unfair competitive advantage. Policymakers pick losers. This distortion generates losses. Policymakers possess no special knowledge to allocate capital more effectively than markets. Concerns about re-election and other benefits drive the process. Groups gain from subsidies and long before slice of the pie. Governments pick winners politically predetermined. The DOE 705 loan program is a good example between what proponents claim and what actually happens. 90% went to target projects backed by large, fully connected companies. It's called cronyism and nails enormous costs. This means any benefit from nuclear but still causes inflation. Lesson 23 writes that subsidies distort markets, private production, private investment, and reduce resources available for nuclear power. That economic impacts will be negative. Eventually, spending will collapse. And for these reasons, I urge a negative ballot. Thank you. It's time for cross.
Yeah. I'll start the timer for cross right now. Audrey, question?
Okay, so for the neg, you talk about how accidents and meltdowns like Chernobyl have happened, but how do you know technology hasn't gotten better?
Because our case clearly shows that companies under Trump will be actually allowed to take back those regulations. And our case shows companies want to lower costs because they're private companies. Their goal is to earn money. So even the technology exists, they won't use it because they're not required to by law, and it's cheaper for them not to use it.
Okay.
Afir?
So look to the absecond contention of desal. You're talking about like a global desalination and like however the places that need it the most, for example Africa, they don't have enough infrastructure to actually like have the SMRs and get the water there. So how do you plan on saving the continent that needs it the most?
Yeah, okay, so basically we're saying that SMRs are key to global desalination projects because when we invest in SMRs, we're able to create like the manufacturer available to like export it everywhere else around the world by investing, like with federal investment. Neil, question?
Sure. So on your contention one of air,
Af.
yeah,
Okay,
for the AF.
Mhm.
On your contention one is of air pollution. So if doesn't nuclear energy release waste as well in like the mining process and
Okay, so,
processes?
You say that there's like the mining process may create uranium, but actually that's less bad because there's already mines for uranium. But when we're making these like nuclear power plants or like when we're using SMRs, we can reuse uranium and then reuse, and then it won't cause as much waste and also solve for more air pollution than it creates.
No,
Of
let's
your-
raise the hand up here again.
Yeah, it's for the neg.
Of course.
Yeah, it's for the neg. So on your contention to inflation, for the deficit spending example, isn't that during COVID? So couldn't that be like an alt factor that inflation increased?
Our card states in the end that alternate factors weren't the reason for it. It includes monetary theory, supply chain issues, and price gouging. Our card already mentions that and shows that the only reason was deficit spending.
Sure.
Does anyone have a question?
Can I take one for
Up
the
here again.
Yeah. So so this is like similar to like Neil's question. So for the uranium mining, your last card on desal says investment solves for all other harms. How does it solve for uranium mining, which is like the main harm?
Okay, we're saying that when we invest in nuclear energy, we can create SMRs, and SMRs are able to solve for like to better air pollution and to like solve for desalination. So obviously the uranium mining, that won't be like as much as a harm as when we're solving for air pollution or we're solving for desalination. We're helping more people than we're hurting more people if you're investing. Yeah. That's pretty much for us.
We'll be taking prep.
Just like a running project.
Okay, we'll take running prep starting right now. Okay, that was 27 seconds of prep.
I am Adithi. I'm the second speaker for Corey Lane on the affirmative side, and is everyone going to start? Okay, time will start with my first word. First, let's look to the first contention of meltdowns. First, SMRs are safe. Nuclear Energy Agency 24 tells you that small reactors means less risk, less explosive fuel, and lower pressures in passive safety systems. In fact, SMRs are even more safe than conventional coal power plants, in which we are able to replace them through voting for the app. Second, alternative energy plants produce more radiation than nuclear. Gale 21 tells that put Chernobyl in the context of other alternatives. Burning fossil fuels releases more radiation into the environment per kilowatt energy generated than a nuclear power facility. Mining to provide pipes for a solar power station brings more radiation. Construction of a dam caused by thousands of bladder cancers. Trump is already tightening safety regulations on nuclear power plants. Their evidence they give you is from February, and we have evidence from this month that is Brumfield that tells you that Trump tightened control over America's nuclear reactors. Going forward, the NRC must send new rules regarding reactor safety to the White House, which they will be reviewed and possibly edited. Also, Trump isn't the only one controlling nuclear energy regulations. They will be safe. He is requiring all of these plants to send a list of all safety regulations to the White House to be checked over to make sure they're safe for the public. Now let's go to their contention about inflation and deficit spending. First, they tell you that inflation is going to go up, but inflation rise is already inevitable. As Pidgey March 28 says, the PCE and index, the Fed preferred inflation measure, ticked up last month. PCE shows a 2.8% increase last month versus a 2.6% in January. Trump's tariff barrage said a 25% tariff on auto could reignite inflation later this year. They tell you that inflation is only going to go up when you invest in nuclear, but it is going to go up no matter what. They have no uniqueness to this argument. Second, deficit spending does not increase inflation. Horsley 19. Governments like the US don't have to worry about spending. Runaway prices are only a danger when demand outstrips the real resources in the economy. If there's idle capacity, additional government spending does not trigger inflation. Powell acknowledged the US job market has shown more capacity to grow without sparking inflation, and his colleagues has expected. Third, nuclear power decreases energy prices and lowers inflation. Wounded 24. Advanced Nuclear Deployment Act reduces barriers for nuclear reactor technology. Increasing production will lower the energy bill, help reduce inflation, and make us safer in the world. It's good for the environment too. Put our nuclear energy security first and quickly sign this historic nuclear energy. By investing in nuclear energy, we are able to solve for all of these problems. The only thing that they tell you is bad is inflation, but that doesn't even go up as our card tells you specifically. Now let's go over the case of circumvention. First, there will be no crowd out at all. Reacher 17. Does government money actually crowd out private investment? We don't have a free market for energy. Eliminating subsidies is highly unlikely. Market by state, loan guarantee focus on first projects in demonstrating these cases. We always pick winners and losers. We had a competitive process, and competing with Lockheed, government is picking. They also try to tell you that the government investment is the only way to go, but because government investment is the only way to go, and their contention about circumvention does not even matter, because their D-Rookie 15 evidence tells you that government investment picks losers, but it's completely false. It only gives you a few reasons of when there were small missteps in the past. These past missteps don't even apply to current generation, as we are tightening regulations and the government is much better at handling nuclear energy. That is why you're always looking to the affirmative to solve air pollution and desalination. Thank you.
I'll start.
No.
That's 1 time. Be a point if you want.
Alright, so I will be doing this after my part.
Cool.
Okay. So my name is Jacob Lee, and I will be the second speaker for the Corey Lane negation side. For the speech order will just be first me. I'm going to defend my case, and then I'm going to go on to their case and just go down their contentions. My time will start on my first word. First, we're going to focus this debate onto our argument of inflation/circumvention because it will better prove our point on the negation side. Now, on our case. First, they say that inflation rise is inevitable. However, we have a linear impact. This means that more inflation will always lead to more deaths, and so we should still be trying to prevent this. Second, they say that governments like the US shouldn't worry about inflation. However, this card is completely false. If you look where they didn't highlight, it shows it's talking about M and T, which are card and constructive, and the card itself denies, and therefore their evidence is false. Next, they say it decreases energy costs, but the cost of electricity doesn't correlate directly with inflation. The lives lost and the overall price increases, plus the linear impact that we have, outweigh the small reduction in price due to nuclear energy. Also, energy saving will come in years while inflation is now. Now, on to our contingent circumvention. First, they said there's no crowd out because government money doesn't crowd out at all. This is their evidence is ultimately false, and so you can't agree with this argument. Next, however, our case shows that historically government has failed to deliver because they've always picked losers. We can't risk this again due to the negative impacts it have. Also, they ignore cronyism and how lobbying is happening right now. All they say is that there are processes, but these can be easily manipulated, and so all their offense can be dropped. Now, onto their case. First, both of their contentions depend on SMRs, so we'll disprove this first. On their SMRs argument, first, in the long run, SMRs are much worse for the environment. Davis 22 writes that the recent study by the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences at Stanford University and University of British Columbia assessed 3 SMRs related to the nuclear waste. The nuclear waste they created surpassed that of a 1,100 megawatt pressurized reactor by 35 times. In addition, researchers reveals that SMRs will produce more voluminous and chemically and physically reactive waste. And researchers contend that the radiotoxicity of discharge from the 3 SMRs would be at least 50% higher. The waste produced is far worse than any other alternative. Second, status quo solved because there's already investment in SMRs. Gordon Hughes 24 writes that AWS and Google announced partnerships and investments in advanced nuclear reactor developers. Tech companies are partnering directly with advanced reactor developers with traditional industry players to advance new nuclear projects. AWS announced its participation in $500 million of financing for advanced reactor developer X Energy and several partnerships to construct 5 gigawatts. The Department of Energy DOE announced a $900 million solicitation for the initial deployments of SMRs. Third, mass manufacture SMRs create major risks and not a good option. When Rama 21 writes that if an error in a mass manufacture reaction were to result in a safety problems, the whole lot might have to be recalled. This is extremely problem because it means it's really risky. Because both their arguments rely on these SMRs, we can therefore disprove both of them. Now, onto their air pollution contention. First, PM 2.5 is already decreasing and can't solve the largest cost. The US already saw a significant reduction in PM 2.5 by 22% in 2024. While pollution control has significantly reduced emissions from fossil fuel power generation, there's no decrease from vehicles and biomass burning. Nuclear energy can't solve for these, and therefore they can't solve for all air pollution, therefore there will always be deaths. And second, there's no impact to air pollution. Young 24 writes that the EPA does not take proper accounting of false positive findings and other biases in studies, nor apply rigorous tests for reproducibility. The research shows that PM 2.5 in outdoor air does not cause premature deaths, and these are reproducible results. And finally, renewable energy is a better alternative because the cost proves. When compared to renewables, the latest analysis determines that new nuclear energy makes it the most expensive, nearly 4 times expensive as solar and wind. Onto their next argument. Renewable energy is a better alternative to cost proofs. Next, onto their desalination argument. We tell you that desalination won't work because solar desalination was proved to be more effective in terms of actually producing fresh water. This is stated by Bayer 17, which tells you that solar desalination is better than nuclear. In the Middle East, the comparative economics of solar and nuclear desalination of all the desalination technologies and power options studied, solar PV panels coupled with reverse osmosis technology were found to be the most economic combination. Water cost for a plant running on reverse osmosis coupled with solar PV panels is $0.85 per cubic meter, while a nuclear power plant coupled with the same technology would have a water cost of $0.91. This shows that it's overall more expensive. In addition, it's also proven to be less effective, and therefore we strongly urge a vote for negation. Thank you. I'll just have this cross.
Okay. Austria?
Okay, so on the you talk about how the government is already tightening regulations, but we've seen that they've actually loosened.
Yeah, so actually this month, at the beginning of this month, Trump released this rule that every single new nuclear power plant that has to be built has to send a checklist of rules and regulations to the White House for the review to make sure it's safe. Javier?
So on the app's third response to inflation, can you give me a direct warrant that says electricity prices will specifically decrease inflation?
Yeah, so we actually tell you that we're able to lower the energy bill, which is able to stop the impact on lower communities. Because you are able to lower the energy bill for all of these working class communities, that helps reduce the inflation burden on them. Okay.
Okay, but how does it decrease inflation?
That's what our card specifically tells you. Vedant 24 says it reduces barriers to energy technology and it helps create American jobs, lower the energy bill, and help reduce inflation.
You sure?
Zombie.
For the MEG, what are the major risks of SMR?
So what we're saying is that SMRs are extremely risky because a single manufacturing error can lead to the entire lot being recalled, and so we can't base our entire argument of nuclear energy onto SMRs. Sorry, I'm here.
Yeah. So this for the neg. So on circumvention, you make a response that just says the evidence is false, but can you give me a good warrant of how the evidence is false?
Okay. So we're basically saying that the evidence is false and disproved because they ignore a good part of our circumvention argument, which is cronyism, which tells you that it's happening right now and the process can be easily manipulated, and so you can't buy their argument.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Neil, do you have a question?
Okay, sure. So on the app, you said that governments like the U.S. don't have to worry about spending. What's your warrant?
Yeah, so we tell you that the governments, they don't have to worry about spending more than they collect in taxes, as the runaway prices are only a danger when it demands real change in the economy, and it's not going to change the economy much. Okay, Austria, you have a question.
Okay, So again, for that app, you state that there's no crowd out. So what's the one?
Yeah, so we tell you that government investment doesn't change how many private investment is actually investing. That is our Reach Through 17 card. Severe.
So on the negs, first response to air pollution. Or second response, sorry. Can you explain how there's no impact to air pollution?
Okay, so what we're saying is that the actual impact that they provide can't be bought because there are inconsistencies in data as well as other biases in studies that the impact they collect can be manipulated.
So even if
But that's cross.
We'll take running prep.
Yeah, running prep starts now.
Well, you guys are taking prep, right?
It's your
Oh, right. No. Okay, that's 145. So then after 15, 17, 48. Yep. Okay. So is everyone ready? Okay. So one more time, my name is Cindy Hu. I'm the first speaker for the Coeur d'Alene Affirmative side. And before I'm giving my summary, the order will be weighing and then going over our case and then going over our opponent's case. My timer will start on my first word. We will be collapsing onto desalination. Extend desalination. Increasing federal nuclear investment in SMR manufacturing drives economies of scale that ensure export for global desalination projects that remove salt from seawater to solve for global water scarcity. Water outweighs because magnitude. Water scarcity kills millions globally every year, and this is far larger than their impacts because you should prioritize who saves the most lives. They only have 11,000 from inflation while we save 2 million with desalination, and it's all over the world. First, onto our case. So they say that SMRs are worse in the long run, but this is just completely untrue because we're extending nuclear energy Agency 24. They say that small reactors means less risk. There's less explosive fuel and lower pressures and passive systems. This just shows that SMRs are even more safe than conventional coal power plants, and we will be able to replace them. They say that nuclear waste is 35 times worse with SMRs. However, we already told you that the waste is being solved in SMRs. We were able to reuse the waste, and it won't be a danger. And they also say that there's already investment in SMRs, but we have to invest more to help solve. Government investment is a lot better. And they say that SMRs are risky, however, investing will only solve. These SMRs may be risky now, but once we put money into them, we'll be able to make them faster and make them cheaper. They also say that renewables are better and they're cheaper than SMRs, but again, putting more money into SMRs, the federal government investing will be able to make SMRs faster, and this will just make them more cheaper because we have the manufacturing. And now extend Gale 21. Alternative energy power plants produce more radiation. Chernobyl, in context of other alternatives, burning fossil fuels releases more radiation into the environment compared to SMRs. Now, they failed to respond to this in rebuttal, and you can't let them respond to this or bring this up because renewables anymore because it's actually worse. They say that desalination won't work because solar is better. However, solar does not work every day, and nuclear plants are just so much better. If solar is so good, why hasn't there been an increase in it? And why are we still not seeing any solvency to the water crisis? Now let's go on to their case. Answering to inflation. They say there's a linear impact when more inflation means more deaths. But first off, we save more people through desal, extending the Wooten 24 evidence. Also, we decrease energy prices, it lowers inflation. ANDA says that reduces barrier for nuclear technology, increasing production will lower energy bills. They say that the cost of electricity does not correlate with inflation, but the warrant is clear here. It adds jobs and it lowers the energy costs. Now answering to circumvention. They say that our evidence is false, but this just isn't true. There is no crowd out. Rider 17 tells you that the government money does not actually crowd out private investment because we don't have a free market for energy. Limiting all subsidies is highly unlikely. They also say that historically government has picked losers, but their card only states that there are federal missteps in clean coal. It's not nuclear energy, so it won't be the same because they have no evidence of past missteps in nuclear. And they say that lobbying is happening now. However, extending Horsley 19 deficit spending won't increase inflation because U.S. does not have to worry about spending, and runaway prices are only a danger when they demand outstrips. And thus, we urge an affirmative ballot. Thank you.
Professor Morris. Let's take running set. Let's start the time now. Okay, that's 120. Ready? Okay. Is anyone not ready? Great. Just for a quick off-time roll map, in my speech, I'll be first weighing this round, defining our case, and examining rebuttals and take Con's case. My time will start on my first word. Judgment, how do you look at it? This way is clear-cut to the negative. We went on the weighing and take our opponent's case on every single level. First, let's go on to the weighing, which wins the bout. First, an expensive inflation. Federal investments will cost trillions and finance to deficit spending. Pumping X amount in the economy will increase stage by 20% over 3 years, guaranteed based on empirics. We went on multiple reasons. First, probability. More inflation will kill 1,000 people because rising prices means less nutritious food and healthcare. This is guaranteed based on empirics. Compared to the times that we solve all water scarcity problems through exporting SMRs. Something that's never going to happen. We also went on time frame. As inflation happens instantly, compared to our opponent's impact, we also have time frame they stay, and will involve building, manufacturing, and exporting around the world. Take decades. We also went on because we take out their case through our case. If there's inflation, the economy is total. We can't solve our opponent's impacts. Nuclear won't exist at all, which means we win this round on that. But what probability and time frame because it ensures our impacts actually happen soon compared to the far from low probability impact that we solve all water scarcity in the world. If we go off that, we win the round. We also win on circumvention. It shows that Trump will pick losers because those history government enterprise is a failure, and Trump will pick cronies who get the most. This means the plans that will be low quality, the plans don't even work, and their opponent's impact won't happen. Also, don't trust their impacts. Their impacts saying how many people die right now, not how many people they save. You can't believe they solve every single instance of water scarcity in the whole world, which means you can't go off their magnitude weighing. Down to our case. Talk about meltdowns, but we already dropped that contention and focus on inflation and circumvention, so they ignore everything about that. On inflation, they keep bringing force 19, but we prove that part is false. It talks about modern monetary theory, something the heart itself is proof. So we read a part in our instructions that proves that too. Ignore this response because it's clearly flawed based on wrong highlighting. Talk about energy prices. Decreasing energy costs doesn't answer the fact that nuclear will make everything else cost 20% more. This does not take out inflation. And also inflation isn't just energy prices, it's everything else. This response doesn't answer inflation. On circumvention, the only response to cronyism, our main point is that force 19, that doesn't even relate to cronyism. So completely ignore that. They also say that government investment doesn't cause crowd out. It doesn't cause crowd out. It's pumping money into companies that fail, which actually cost much more in the long run. Now to their case. First, our circumvention takes up everything they say because the plants won't exist or be low quality if government invests, which means that their impacts will never happen. Also, inflation takes up their case because if inflation in the economy is total, who's going to invest in nuclear? No one. Those are both the pensions take up their case on every single level. Give you another reason to vote for the negative. Our case, SMRs clearly take out their case. Our case clearly shows that SMR is also worse for the environment. Davis 22 shows that nuclear SMRs make 35 times more waste. Their only response is that it has less fuel, but even has less fuel, it uses a lot more, much more fast, which means that actually much worse for the economy. Our War in Davis 24 shows that there's billions of dollars invested in SMRs right now. Their only response is that we need more investment, but these investments are happening now. We don't need more investment if the private sector already solves. And we need to spend government money. They also ignore the fact that SMRs create risk, like Rajan 21 show, which is that SMRs are a bad investment, and that's the only thing they actually argue for. Also on D-Styles, Vedant 17 shows that solar panels are much cheaper. The only response is that investing in nuclear will lower prices. But our circumvention shows new government investment will actually increase prices. So overall, we take out their case on every single level, and they have no response to ours other than a false card. We went on a way, and therefore we win the round. Time for Grand Cross.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone have a question?
Sabi.
Okay, cool.
For the app,
Yeah.
why does the US not need to worry about spending?
Yeah, so we tell you specifically that the United States, as it's such a big economy, deficit spending does not have that much of an impact. Because we are already getting so much through taxes and we have so much income of money into the economy that deficit spending doesn't change anything.
Ashri.
Okay, so this is for the neg. You talk about how Trump will pick losers. What are the examples of him doing this in the
Okay,
past?
okay, we don't examples. I bring up the card right now.
Okay.
Give me a second. So a few examples, I think, sorry. The examples that we have are the Clint Breeder Reactor, the National Nuclear Facility, Superconducting Super Collider, Future Gen, Partnership for New Generation Vehicles, Freedom Car, and the Yucca Mountain Nuclear Maze. Nuclear Waste Massive. I'm pretty sure there's more examples. That's what we have in our card. Anyone else have a question?
Neil, do you have a question?
Sure. So for the app, what was your response to the next claim about how solar panels have worked better for desalination?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so they say that solar panels work better, right? And that's one of the renewables. However, solar plants can't work like every day. It only works when the sun's out. And they may say that it's better, but we already said that once we invest, we're putting more money into SMRs, and this will just make them even better. Because obviously, if you're putting money into something, they'll be able to make them better and work better than renewables.
Okay.
Yeah. Avir?
What's the point of spending, as for the app, what's the point of spending extra money in SMRs when you don't prove that SMRs are more effective and you don't read a card on it? So what's the point of actually investing in
We
SMRs?
actually have extended our NEA 24 evidence telling you that SMRs are so much better because they are able to have less risk, less explosive fuel, and they have lower pressures. They have passive safety systems that are so much better than any other past investments, and they are recently been invested in and been innovated in.
Yeah, we also told you that alternatives are just even worse, like because they produce more radiation, so that's why SMRs are better.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, can I take a follow-up?
Sure.
So it's not a really follow-up related to that question, but
Okay.
it's a different question. So it's for the neg. So like on the circumvention argument, can you explain how like so can you explain the circumvention, like you keep saying that they drop something, but can you explain like that second link on circumvention?
Oh, cronyism?
Yeah.
What it's basically saying is that government picks politically motivated winners because they're being paid by those companies to choose them. It's basically a process of lobbying, a process of investing in campaigns that exists today, and that shows that government funding goes to companies that invest in the current leader, not just the best person. It's been proven in the past, and it will happen with Trump.
Okay,
That's cross. You have like 40 seconds, 48 seconds.
Yeah, we'll just
Yeah,
use
we'll take
the rest of
it.
running
It's
prep.
starting now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So our prep.
Okay.
So first, in this debate, I'll be going over extending our case, why it's the most important in this debate, and then I'll go over our responses to what they claimed on our case and why our case still stands, and then I'll finally go over their case. Time will start on my first word. Judges, let me tell you why investing into nuclear energy will solve for water scarcity. Increasing federal nuclear investment into SMR manufacturing drives economies of scale that ensure export for global desalination projects that are able to remove salt from seawater to solve global water scarcity. The first thing you must look at in this debate is who is able to save the most lives and do the most good. Our case of desalination is the best at helping save everyone. We are able to save for millions of lives as we solve for desalination. Even if they say we can't solve for all of it, we still solve for so much more than the neg. When you look at what they solve for, it is just 11,000 lives. Sure, maybe you might buy it might increase inflation a bit, but when the government invests into things, it doesn't increase inflation, and there's studies from COVID, which is an alternate factor. In fact, on circumvention, you must realize they are saying, oh, Trump cronyism is bad, and that's all they talk about. But their card is from 2015. Trump was not in office in 2015. None of that happened before. All of that happened before Trump. You can't even buy this. Then on our desalination case, the only response they tell you is that solar is better, but they say plants will be built on low quality. But again, our Bromfield evidence from earlier this month tells you Trump a tightened administration, and they say we can't. And this evidence is more recent, which says that the affirmative side is the side to vote on. They also tell you something about solar desalination being better. But if solar was so much better, why haven't we seen an increase in desalination efforts worldwide? Because solar does not work. It doesn't work all the time. Now let's go over their case and why it doesn't stand. They say inflation will happen instantly, but it won't happen at all. We already tell you deficit spending won't happen and it won't have any impact on the economy. And they say Trump that picks losers, but again, the examples they read was on clean coal. This was before the Trump presidency. They have no evidence from past the Trump presidency. And you can't even buy their case because we have told you time and time again, our Wounded 24 evidence, how investing in nuclear is the only way to go because any other way doesn't work. Judge, we will be able to save millions with the right investment. Inflation won't increase investment, and therefore I urge an affirmative ballot. Thank you.
We still have 30 seconds of prep, and we'll take using all of it. Starting now.
That's the time.
So, my name is Jacob Lee, and I will be reading the final focus, the last speech. The order of the speech will just be, I'm going to be going on to weighing, I'm going to go through some final elements of our case, and then finally go down to their case. My time will start on my first word. No matter how you look at it, the negation wins this round because we've disproven our opponent's argument, meaning they have no impact. Now, first, we outweigh over this case based first on inflation. Federal nuclear investment will cost trillions and will be financed through deficits, pumping excess money into the economy, which will increase inflation by 20% over 3 years. We outweigh on A, probability. 20% inflation would kill over 11,000 lives guaranteed, compared to the chance that we solve all water scarcity problems. In addition to the fact that SMRs are already not a good solution. We also outweigh on B, time frame. Inflation happens instantly compared to our opponent's impact, which involves a manufacturing base and exporting it, which can take up to decades. And finally, we have a prerequisite. If there is already inflation and the economy is totaled, our opponent's impacts won't exist, and so nuclear won't exist at all. Vote off probability and time frame because it ensures that our impacts will actually happen and will happen soon compared to a far off and low probability impact, and off that we win. We also win from circumvention. Extend Trump's circumvention. Trump will pick losers because both the history of government energy projects is a failure, and Trump will pick cronies. Don't trust their impacts because their impacts say how many people die right now, not how many people they save. And so you can't believe that they end all water scarcity around the world. Now, on our case, first, on inflation, again, ignore the Horsley 19 card. It is a false card that's older and based off false logic, and the money theorem, which is disproven. They ignore this response, so ignore their offense. They repeatedly argue how nuclear will decrease energy prices, but this is outweighed by the instant increase in prices due to deficit spendings and inflation. If we can't last through the initial cost, we won't be able to reap the hypothetical benefits. Now, on to circumvention, the only response that's old, but cronyism already exists right now, which shows that cronyism will exist if we invest. They also read about clean coal, but it's breeder reactor coal, so it's completely irrelevant. Now, in our case of circumvention takes out anything they say, so the plans won't exist or be low quality. Inflation also prereqs the case because there will be no investment in nuclear if the economy is totaled. On SMRs, we've already proven that there's already investment, but SMRs are also risky because one miscalc will lead to failure for all. On desalination, we've already disproven SMRs. We'll tell you that solar desalination is far better than nuclear because it's cheaper and more effective. Finally, it's impossible to save all lives through desalination, and therefore we strongly urge a vote on negation. Thank you.
Awesome. That concludes